I'm here today with Jeromy Bryk of Brick Squad Barbell. How are you doing today?
Great. How are you, bro? Thanks for
Great.
having me on.
Absolutely. What got you into the powerlifting and or bodybuilding lifestyle?
Yeah. So when I got to college, I went to Cleveland State. Um, I had just graduated high school, and I realized that. So I realized that my life was kind of like in transition,
Mhm.
and I didn't have anything to keep me grounded anymore. I was always into doing sports growing up, so I was real involved in baseball, football, and track all throughout high school. And then when I graduated, I was like, okay, now what? You know, because I still love training. I was always big into the weight room ever since I was about 13. I started lifting weights, and that had always been something I was interested in, but I felt like I needed something to train for. So fast forward about a year or two of being in college, I stumbled onto bodybuilding, and that was 2014. So that was right around when they started the men's physique division. That would have been like the second or third year they had it. So I did two men's physique shows in early 2014, came back and did a third one at the end of the year. So I had three shows in 2014, and then I was starting to feel real fulfilled with that, but it was time to go into off season. And so 2015, I started to get into powerlifting a little bit more because during that off season, again, I was getting bored. I didn't have anything to push towards. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to be lifting heavy anyways. I felt my numbers going up. Then I ended up getting on like the Squat Everyday program that was on bodybuilding.com at the time, and that kind of got me hooked on powerlifting. Did my first meet in August 2015.
Okay.
And then kind of made a nice run there for about 3 years before I returned to bodybuilding.
Nice.
In classic physique. I've done over 20 powerlifting meets and then a dozen or so bodybuilding shows.
So as a competitor, whether that be in track or baseball,
Mhm.
whatever, what was your hardest obstacle to overcome?
Yeah.
And then as a coach, what was your hardest obstacle to overcome?
Yeah, I'd say for both, like the biggest obstacle I've had to overcome was like really getting out of my own way.
Yeah.
Um, most of us don't grow up confident.
Mm.
And I guess like the really rough thing for me was I felt like confidence was something everybody was kind of like built with. Either you have it or you didn't, which obviously that's not the case.
Right.
So when I was in sports, like especially in high school, I would kind of self-sabotage myself a little bit. If I didn't feel confident in something, I wouldn't try as hard because I was like, well, I'm not. I knew I wasn't a gifted athlete,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I would like purposely kind of hold myself back to keep myself from failing because I was so scared of failing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I realized that happened to me a little bit early on in bodybuilding, but when I got into powerlifting and I started squatting every day and I started to collect small wins, that kind of changed. So then when at the time I did become a coach, I had already started to like build up a lot of self-confidence and know what my abilities were and know that if I was lacking in like a skill area, I could change it with just a little bit of hard work and getting the right guidance. But that was something I really had to work on. So really getting out of my own way and believing in myself was the biggest obstacle, I'd say, for both things.
Cool. Would you say that that's the hardest problem for most people to overcome?
I think a lot of that is like self-confidence. I think a lot of people really limit themselves because they were told something growing up. A lot of times, a lot of it's just self-limiting beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
It's like my family only made X amount of money, therefore I can only make X amount of money.
Right.
Or my dad was only so big, or I'm only so big right now, and I can't do this because somebody else told me I couldn't. And you're putting these caps on your potential, and whether it consciously or subconsciously, it's really holding you back. And I think a lot of people, like even like clients I work with, I tell them, yeah, it's possible for you to lose 30 pounds, and they're like, oh, I don't know about that. It's because they haven't collected enough small wins yet.
Right. Absolutely.
So definitely.
What was the hardest muscle group for you to train?
So I would say back for sure. When I first started competing, I just didn't have the connection with my upper back and my lats. I was doing the movements, but I couldn't feel them as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that for sure. I always found it pretty easy to train chest, shoulders, and arms.
Okay.
And legs, obviously, I grew up in the weight room, so I was squatting all the time in high school.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't really necessarily have a hard time like training legs, but back was a confusing one. It's a big muscle group. There's a lot of different angles you got to hit everything from. Not everything works for everybody.
Right.
So you got to really find what works for you and be able to create that connection. That was the hardest one for me. Yeah.
How did you go about forming your gym?
So opening a gym is something I always wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
But we kind of shelved it for a while, for a couple of years as I built my online personal training business. I got married at the end of last year. But then as this year rolled around, it kind of like popped back up into my mind a little bit. So my wife and I kind of talked about it a little bit. And then in June, we got invited to another gym in the area. The guy wanted us to take over the gym, either whether it was going to be like a buyout or we would work there and manage a gym while he was not present there and doing other business related things. Long story short, that wasn't the deal we were looking for, but we kind of got the wheels turning on that a little bit. The next day, my wife went online and she looked up a couple different like storage units in the area, because we always wanted a gym with like a big garage door. It was kind of in like a industrial looking area to make kind of like an old school environment. And so we went
more hardcore.
Yeah, exactly. So we went online. We looked up a couple different like storage units. We found them on Facebook Marketplace. We went and visited one in Medina. It was a little bit too small for us. It was a little bit further away because we already have a client base here in Cleveland, so that didn't make any sense. But then we came back and we found the one here in North Royalton, and it just felt right to us. So we saw the gym. It would have been a Monday, and I think we texted the landlord on Tuesday, said we were in, and we signed the lease, I want to say 2 weeks later. Wow. Luckily, I had a lot of equipment in the basement because I was kind of panic buying equipment during 2021 because there was still a lot of a threat for the gyms to be shut down again.
Right.
So I panic bought like a lot of plates. I had over 700 pounds of plates, a deadlift platform, a combo rack. I had a lot of equipment saved up, and I wasn't using it a lot. So I was able to move that in right away. And I'm like, okay, well, at least I got enough to train clients. And then we made some road trips to go get dumbbells and other machines. Like the longest road trip we went on was 500 plus some miles round trip to Eastern Pennsylvania to pick up our dumbbells. So there was a little bit of hustling going around for a couple months there, but it was a pretty streamlined process once we found the location. And yeah, I feel like that's been the missing piece in my business and in my life, because it makes me feel so complete as a business owner, because it's like a space that we can call our own. We can create our own community of clients and like-minded individuals. So, but yeah, once we got the place, it was just picking up equipment, loading stuff in here. We're still in the process of like expanding everything, getting the best equipment we can for our dollar. So we're getting like a piece or two of equipment every month right now.
Cool.
That's the goal. But yeah, that's kind of how we went about it.
So was the hardest part just getting the equipment, or was it something else?
I would say the hardest part was finding the location.
Oh, okay.
Once you find the location and the price is right, then getting equipment's not that bad. You just can't be as picky about it. I think a lot of people think you have to have the top of the line brand new equipment right away. Yeah. So I feel like for me, like that was again a self-limiting belief. I felt like I had to go $30,000 in debt to start a gym, and that's just like not the case.
Right.
You have to look at it like an entry point. So even if like right now all our stuff's not brand new, it works though. It works and it gets the job done. So in the future, once things build a little bit more, then we'll go out and start buying brand new equipment. But that was like finding the place is the hardest part. Finding equipment, as long as you're willing to kind of swallow your pride in some things, isn't that bad. So
gotcha.
Yeah.
Did the owner of the storage unit look at you out when you said you wanted to turn it into a gym?
That's actually funny. The gym that we're in now was a gym a couple years ago.
Oh, really?
COVID put the previous guy out of business. He said he got a lot of inquiries from like mechanics and stuff like that, but he always felt like it was kind of I guess he said it was kind of messy when they would get in and like work on cars and everything like that. So he was more happy that we were wanting to start a gym. He said he was kind of waiting for somebody.
Oh, that's cool.
So that was another like confirming thing for us, that I was like, no way.
Everything was falling into place.
Yeah, everything started to fall into place, and plus we had a good feeling about it. And so, and when he said that, I was like, this place was meant for us. It's, what I mean, especially because it was vacant for almost 2 years. So yeah, he didn't look at us funny. He was actually like relieved, I think.
That's good.
Yeah. So he's like, it's actually the perfect location for that. And I'm like, okay, perfect.
I'm going to continue with him after these last two questions on his channel. We're going to do more training related questions on there. But my last two questions are connected, so I'm just going to read them together.
Sure.
What is your favorite part of Ohio? And what do you think is the most overlooked thing about Ohio?
So my favorite part of Ohio is that we have all 4 seasons, and we don't have a lot of natural disasters here. Yeah, I mean, like we don't have to gear up for hurricane season, and especially up here in Cleveland, we don't really get tornadoes or anything like that. And I really enjoy the fall and winter. I love having snow on Christmas, like that kind of stuff. And at the same time, we get a nice spring. The springs here is always really pretty, and the summer is always really hot. So I love having 4 seasons. And I think the most overlooked thing about Ohio is I think a lot of people think it's just like if you drive up I-71
Mm-hmm.
and you see a lot of nothing, you see a lot of cornfields and stuff like that. So I think people don't realize there's a lot to do in Ohio.
Yeah, there is.
You know, like obviously if you make your way all the way up to Cleveland, like there's a lot going on in Cleveland. We have all the major sports teams.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of stuff going on up here. So I think there's that. And I mean, and I guess like from a like logistics standpoint, like it's a nice place to live.
Mm-hmm.
The cost of living's low, especially for fitness people. There's a lot happening here. Because Ohio's kind of like a mecca of fitness. I think people kind of overlook that. Like we've got the Arnold Classic here,
Right, absolutely.
you know, and there's a lot going on with like strength sports and stuff, like Rogues here.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot going on in that aspect, like for selfishly on my end of things. But I would say just like how much there actually is to do.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people drive through and they think it's like a nowhere
Right.
state, like a flyover state, but like that's couldn't be further from the truth.
Absolutely, I agree
know?
with that. So I'm going to link the rest of this interview in the channel description of his channel, or the video description rather,
Mm-hmm.
and we will see you there.